we're recording these series of episodes over at Social Launch Labs, and I really wanted to say thank you for having us. And also to our corporate partners. Without them, we wouldn't be able to run events or publish content like this. So we really appreciate everything that our corporate partners have done to help us kind of boost Calgary's place in the marketing world, so to speak. On today's episode, we have Heather Isley. I said it right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Okay,
yeah.
Good. So Heather is a fractional CMO and strategic marketing advisor. You've got deep expertise in tech, B2B, SaaS, financial services. You offer marketing strategy, digital marketing, sales pipeline optimization, media strategy, among other things. So we're excited to have Heather on the show today to kind of chat a bit about creativity and the ways systems might be getting in the way of creative. So thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I wanted to start off really by kind of unpacking the system problem, so to speak. So kind of discuss how a lot of the creative problems aren't actually creative problems at all, but more like system problems and what that actually means. So did you want to get going on that?
Yeah, so I think often we're quick to blame creative if the campaign doesn't perform. It's easy to say, the ideas weren't any good, the assets weren't good. But I think if we go back to it, really we can look at a system problem. And I think it's good to start by why are systems a good thing in general? What is a system? And I think really it requires less thinking because everyone knows what's supposed to happen. I think there's often a misconception that systems can kill creativity, which really, I think it creates the conditions for creativity really to thrive. And I think with systems, you're able, if you don't have one, you're really reliant. It's risky. You might be reliant on one or two people to have a great idea at kind of that perfect time. Whereas if you have a system, you create the conditions for anyone from the team to be able to plug in and create creative that has a good chance of being effective. So it lowers risk.
Yeah. If you don't mind, I wanted to ask you also, part of what caught my eye when I first asked you to do this is that I know a little bit about your background,
a
fair bit about your background, but also as a digital ad agency person, one of your posts was about creative being sort of, I don't want to call it the panacea, but it's a much better targeting tool than we ever thought we had. And so I kind of wanted just to ask you about that, the systems that get you to creating this piece of creative that could be the best tool that we have for targeting, as opposed to the digital channels that we're so used to thinking of as the targeting tool.
Yeah, so why am I leaning into
creative?
Why creative? I know, it's...
how did you get to systems through creative, but being a digital person, how does that all work?
Yeah, I know it is surprising that I have come from this kind of media background where targeting really it's the drum that everyone's banging, and it's that was the promise really with digital, right? Was, now we have this information and we can just get laser focused and we can find those people. But I think what has happened over time is that the algorithms have taken over more and more of the targeting. There's really been a homogenization and they've taken over. And so when you look at the levers that marketers have to control, targeting doesn't offer the same advantage that it used to. And so creative really, if you look at the research in terms of, and marketers are notoriously bad at understanding or reporting or thinking they know. Creative is always underreported as an effective lever when in fact, I think it was Kantar's report, 51%. Yeah, exactly. It creative really does have the potential to effectively target and reach that right audience, because if they're not interested, they're not going to pay attention, and that's what you're competing for, right? Is attention.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to think of it because, let's talk about ad agencies and stuff like that, and maybe younger creative teams come up with these ideas and they could be subjective, But when you actually put some more measurement around it, or reporting around it, it kind of gives you a bit of a more informed direction into what creative you take, right?
Yeah, I think it does, but I also think that there's an opportunity when you look at measurement. I think we've become obsessed with, ROAS, cost per lead. We're looking really at like campaign metrics, and that isn't necessarily helpful going back to creative teams to tell them, here's how to make the creative more impactful. So when I talk about a system, what I'm really thinking about is, starting with what is that deep customer insight. Often I think marketing has become the production department where it's not, we have a strategic problem that we need to solve. It's, we need an email campaign, or we need a media campaign. We need to be on Facebook, as opposed to taking it all the way back to being strategic with what is the deep customer insight, and starting there, working from there, working within guardrails and parameters.
So, okay, so let's just come back to the system. But if we think about, okay, rather than the targeting tool being the media and the the levers and the the wizard behind the curtain on like the media platforms itself, and you look at the creative as being the best targeting tool that we have, the most competitive advantage that we can create for our brands, what is the right kind of system to get to the optimal outcome for targeting and for performance on a great piece of creative?
Right. Okay. So I think the right kind of system is one that it's clearly understood by everyone in the organization. Everyone understands where there are feedback loops, who has approvals, what is the definition of good creative even look like? And it's not just based on, the highest person's opinion. It's oftentimes it can be based on factors that are defined, does this meet the outcomes that we're looking for? Is it aligned to the goals of the campaign, but also the larger business goals? Does the system allow for testing and iteration? And then from a measurement perspective, actually I should back up. Is there alignment between marketing strategy, creative, and media? And I think that's something that a lot of brands really struggle with. Is creative brains are really great at thinking in a particular way, and media buyers or media agencies think in another way. And how do we get the measurement and communicate back to creative teams and have those feedback loops? So I think involving all three, strategy, media, and creative, early, and it's not each of them working in silos. They're really working together, and I think that's something that is often missing from great systems.
You mentioned the hippo thing, the highest paid person in the room idea. So I remember this happening once at least, where we brought in a creative idea, and they're like, let me check with my daughter. He's checking with his 15-year-old daughter to get approval on a $1 million campaign. I'm like, okay, I guess. But part of the reason why I think you get to that point is because you don't have anything like a brief that says, here was the objective, here was what we're doing, here was the goal, here's the parameters of what we should evaluate the creative by.
Yeah.
And so without that, then you end up in this position where you got somebody checking with their 15-year-old daughter to figure out if they like the creative or not. So how important does the briefing part become in that system?
So yeah, and we've talked about briefs, and I think briefing is so important, whether you're briefing an agency, whether you're briefing an internal team. I really think it starts with going through that process, provides clarity, and forces us as marketers to really understand, is everyone working from the same basis of understanding? Are we all aligned? Do we agree that this is what the problem is that we're trying to solve? And we've talked, with the rise of AI, briefing, like no one ever taught me how to do a brief. It wasn't something that I learned in business school. It wasn't actually anything I learned in my job. But I've been on the receiving end of many poor briefs, right? Where the audience is like adults 18 plus,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or interest in
Our
this.
goal is to sell more.
Yeah. And then it's like, oh, what are the interests? Oh, they have an interest in our industry.
Yeah.
And it's like, and that's not helpful. And so, and with the rise of AI and more people leaning into having elements of campaigns created by ChatGPT or Gemini, right? Like pick your favorite AI assistant. That's just briefing as well. Prompt engineering is briefing. And it's really the inputs, the quality of the inputs. And this is something I think maybe we've taken shortcuts as marketers, right? We've had targeting. We were able to kind of do the targeting and the KPIs just kind of rolled in and everyone was happy. But now we are having to really do the hard work and prepare that brief, make sure that it has deep customer insight, everyone is aligned, making sure that even your media teams understand like what is that kind of creative tension. Keeping all of those teams aligned is really critical.
Yeah.
Can you kind of unpack what a system is? I think we haven't touched on that
Sure.
yet. Can we kind of like back it up and kind of just talk about, like, can you describe what a system might look like?
Yeah, so I think like it's important to differentiate between like system and processes, right?
Yeah.
So I think a system is, and there's systems for everything, right? Like Ray Dalio, famous for his book, I don't know if you've read Principles, where he talks about like these are the set of criteria that we're going to use to make decisions. And he used it for investing, wildly successful there, used it, in his day-to-day life. And so system really is, it's much more than just a process. It's kind of a, you could say it's like a series of processes, but really it's an agreed upon, like this is how we're going to work together to get from point A to point B. And so it could include things like, who are the stakeholders, who has approval rights, what are the parameters or guardrails that we are using to make decisions. And so it's outlining basically like a framework of how we're going to work together. And so depending on the scope of the project or who's involved, you may have different people involved at different, you could look at like RACI as well. Like often systems will include like a RACI matrix to say who is responsible for different elements as the project moves through the system.
There's a Better Briefs organization, and then they've got the Better Briefs project, but then the Better Ideas project. And it kind of, as you're saying that, it made me think there's a process around how to do better briefs, but then a process around how to get better ideas from the briefs. And so if you combine those together, in my head, I'm like, well, that's maybe part of the system.
Yeah.
Because there's the briefing part, as you mentioned, there's the collaboration there, I think, that's important between not just the strategist, but also the media team, and then also the creative team, and maybe executive sponsors fit into that, or somehow. But once the brief is done, it's not just, you're done. Then there's this gauntlet of approvals and various things.
Yeah.
Which is its own separate process too. Like, how important are those things? How closely do you need to be connected together to get a good output, do you think?
Yeah, I think they all have to be connected together. And really, I think it's feedback, right? Like a good system isn't just you design it and it's done. Yeah. As you work through it, you're going to discover, okay, this didn't work, or this took too long, or you might say, the reason that this didn't work is because our approvals are too slow. And you might think like that's the problem is slow approvals, but the actual problem could be, it's not clear who is responsible for approving.
Right.
It could be that there are no parameters around, what constitutes like go or no go in terms of approvals. And so I think it's like you really wanted to define kind of all of those different pieces in there so that each part of the system there's no guesswork.
Mm-hmm.
It's able to be repeatable. A new member of the team should be able to come in and they would be able to operate within there, relatively quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Because it isn't a system if it's not repeatable.
Exactly, right? That's
Yeah.
part of the reducing risk is if you're just relying on one or two people and they like, oh, I know what to do because it's in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's documented. And that, I think, the consistency, like any system, if you think about it, consistency and discipline will really get you a long way. And so being able to execute creative effectively does require on doing the same things consistently over time.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on like from a project management style, like an agile project management style? What are your thoughts on that? If all systems should be consistent, how do you develop this kind of like agile? I'm trying not to say process because you told me it's not a process.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it depends on your organization, right? Some organizations are really well suited for that. Tech, where you have kind of like product, and if they're developing product in an agile environment, then that might slot in there, and culturally it could work really well. Other organizations may not be as well suited to agile. It depends. I think it also depends on leadership, but really inherent in kind of any good system, I think, is the ability to really reflect, look back, determine what works and what doesn't, and be willing to adapt and make changes. Like those feedback loops throughout the process are really, really critical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because even like when we're thinking ad campaigns or whatever, does a system allow for pre-testing or testing creative?
It can, right? Like often, and there's many different ways that you might want to do that. It could be that you test, pre-test, put it out to like a focus group. You may put it out a small campaign in a particular geo or region. Often with, let's say, Meta, you might put a campaign, you might put some ideas on there, put some statics, run a little test to see if the message is working, and then if they are working, then you could build out, into like more interactive assets, video. But you may test like different components of the campaign, and then expand on that.
And then what would the role of, let's say, like a marketer's role, for instance, in something like that be for a system like that?
What do you mean by that?
Like what would, how am I trying to say this? Basically, how should marketers be thinking in terms of what their roles are when it comes to these different types of systems and where they play within that role, and so on and so forth, where it's not just creative and media placement, but it's actually, like, let's say, a strategist or something like that.
Yeah. So I think as marketers, we need to be really thinking and more so, especially with AI, about inputs. I think we've gotten maybe a bit lazy and we're thinking about outputs. We're thinking about, what's the cost per lead or the number of leads, or but really, like anything in life, you get out what you put in. I really believe that. And so I think marketers need to be thinking more about quality inputs. So that's things like, have I done the deep customer research?
Yeah.
Do I really understand my customer? Like reflecting on like what is the brand? What are the differentiators? Like who do we serve with this brand? And I think this is maybe part of a little bit of like the discomfort now as things have shifted. It's truly good marketers are really focusing on those inputs because that is what is going to determine the quality of the outputs, whether that is a regular campaign or leveraging AI. We've all we've all seen the I don't think it's very good, and it's like, well, what are you feeding into it?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with system, right? The quality.
Kind of building on what you're saying too, I think if I'm just say I'm a creative person.
You are a creative person.
I don't think of myself that way, but like somebody making the creative. Like you could just say, well, I'll take whatever comes to me. But like building off what you're saying, I think there's and you kind of alluded to this earlier, like there's a role for the creative people to have an input and wherever they fall in the RACI chart. But in the beginning part of the brief, just as there is a role for the strategist, it doesn't have to be just the strategist saying, this is the path for everyone. Now you just do your jobs.
Yeah.
It's like before accepting a brief, as part of the system to improve and get better creative on the back end, like there's a role for dialogue, discussion, input from all different people to make the inputs better so that you get a better outcome.
Yeah.
I think it's not just your job is this, stay in your lane, especially in the initial onboarding process, I think, of the brief.
Yeah, I think that's how we've kind of got into a bit of trouble, right? Is things have been so siloed.
Yeah.
Like your media.
Yeah, whoever writes the brief, maybe they write the brief and they lob it over the fence, right? Creative is often briefed before media. And so they're ideating, they're thinking of ideas. Media gets involved often after creative, the concept has already been determined. And media may say, oh, geez, these are some channels that would be a great fit to help us achieve the objective and to reach our audience, but it doesn't fit with the creative concept. So now what do we do? And so I think it's really having everyone at the table from the beginning. And then when media gets the results of the campaign, then sharing it back in a way that makes sense for creative. Because finding out that this particular asset drove 0.16% higher CTR. Like, what does that mean, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's nothing.
Yeah.
Or, oh, this was 0.18 and this was 0.16. Well, that's the same.
Yeah.
And so I think media has not done a great job of really reporting back. And part of this is media buyers think they think in spreadsheets and they think in different ways.
Stuff,
yeah, exactly. And so, but creative, which hooks worked? On like TikTok, the average watch time, you have 1.5 seconds to grab someone's attention, which is insane to me. I think Instagram's like 2 or 3 seconds, but you have 1.5 seconds. So there may be hooks that grab people's attention right off the bat, but are not leading to, say, a conversion event or watching the entire video. So reporting back on performance isn't just, oh, well, this is what got the most watch time, or here's where we got the lead. It's this is what is working from a hook perspective. This is what we're seeing kind of like it's really, there's an opportunity that I don't think a lot of brands are taking to really dissect creative performance, because once you start feeding those insights back into the start of the system and ideating and using that, you're gonna be able to get much more impactful.
Especially if you think about what you were talking about before, like the specificity of the brief. If you're clear on the objective, you can measure performance against that instead of all the data that comes out of the platform afterwards.
Ugh.
Right? And then that's where you get I had a 0.15 click-through rate, and then the creative person's like,
so
I didn't build it for a 0.15. I don't know what you're talking
yeah.
about. Right?
Did someone feel something?
Yeah,
Was it?
Yeah. Did they remember anything? Like,
well, because we're all so short term.
Yeah.
Right? Everyone is thinking short term. Digital's done this to us. Is just think, oh, next quarter, or I have to drive are we thinking about future buyers, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's there's an opportunity, and you see it, if you look at like the brands that are advertising on like more traditional channels, it's large tech brands, right? Because they know that future buyers, you need to be building that pool of future buyers. It's not just, let's get something out of the bottom of the funnel.
From your perspective, having received a whole bunch of briefs, do you think it's possible that you can have a brief that's too tight? Is it like, you know what I mean?
Like doesn't allow for...
Yeah, like that's too specific, or is too niche or too narrow? Like, or is the problem more the other way, where they're too generic, too broad?
Yeah, I can't think of a time where I ever received a brief that was too tight. It was more info. And I mean, it's got to be brief, right? I
Yeah.
don't want to read through 17 pages, but I honestly can't think of very many times where I received a brief that was tight from it's concise, this is strategic, like this tells me exactly what I need to do in order to be able to execute the campaign. It's always, and I think part of the problem is we haven't done the hard work, right? Have we done the customer research? Do we understand that tension? What is our hypothesis? What are we trying to solve for here? I think it's just so many brands are we're the production department. We need a campaign, but we haven't gone back to really think about the customer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, I think speed, probably, like the need of having to get things out fast rather than,
Yeah.
leads to that idea of, well, we don't have the time to do the research. We don't have the time to think. Because
Yeah.
we have to just do, we're producing, we're busy.
Yeah. We need to produce 1,200 assets. I had a campaign once with 1,200 assets, and it's like, oh my goodness, this is so much. And like, what had to be done in order to get those assets out the door? And, was that brief, was that an incredible brief that led to, we have all these things that we're going to test? No, it wasn't. It was just, we're going to be on 11 billion channels, and we're going to have so many messages, and we're going to mix and match, and then we will know.
Yeah.
And instead it's like, are we relying on the campaign to try to tell us information about the customer that we should have led with that? Because at the end of the day, we didn't have any meaningful insights on the customer after 1,200 assets. Yeah.
So interesting.
Can we talk a bit about, I guess, kind of building a better system? So say what's the most important, change that creative and marketing teams can make to kind of help improve their systems, would you say?
I think it's really is tighter alignment between strategy, creative and media, and then feedback loops throughout.
Yeah.
I think right now, often they're very siloed. And if you can get everyone in the room and aligned from the onset, that is a huge piece to start with.
There's something about building a good culture there too, I think, hey? 'Cause,
Yeah.
I mean, not that I'm saying any of my previous jobs had bad cultures or
Yeah.
toxic environments or anything like that, but I think systems could create or prevent these toxic work environments and stuff like that, where everybody feels like they've got a seat at the table, so to speak. Everybody's working for the same reason, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, it's a really interesting concept. I like it.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, often what happens is everyone is feeling rushed,
Yeah.
right? This marketing is often has their internal clients, right? It might be sales, could be product, and they don't have the information from the business. So the strategist is writing a brief that's not great because maybe they don't even know what the goals are,
Yeah.
right? It's like, we need to launch this. Well, do we have expectations on, what are we looking for? They're not getting that information from the business. So marketing needs to ask for that information from the business, but product is still in development. It's really challenging. I don't want to make it and seem that it's just really simple. And then marketing is like, well, geez, we need to brief creative because we need to give them enough time.
Yeah.
But we don't have information.
Assets.
Exactly, right? And then media, it's kind of like, oh, geez, well, we think we want to know a little bit about what we're going to do creatively before we brief media. So, everyone, there's no one group that's kind of holding it up. It's legitimately this is an organizational problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you don't put icing on the cake before you even have the whatever you call it.
The
Yeah.
cake.
The cake.
cake.
built. Yeah.
Icing on the cake before the cake.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to celebrate or share around what you've got going on?
Yeah, I don't know. I've kind of just been chugging along, just have my consulting practice, and yeah, it's just been working with good people, and yeah, nothing major that's going on with me.
Well, I can celebrate one thing. She's on the board, which is
Oh,
great.
yeah.
with
I am,
CMA, which
yeah.
is super awesome.
That
It's
has been
awesome
great.
having you there.
Yeah.
So I will celebrate that on your behalf.
Yeah, I'm not good at celebrating, but yeah, no, I've really enjoyed that. It's been really good so far.
Yeah, it's been great having you on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I guess I am spending a lot of time because I have more time now, right? I'm not working 60 hours a week in an agency with many clients and
Right.
and a large team. So I've been able to really kind of protect my time, and I spend a lot of time. I'm just so curious about AI and leveraging that. So I spend a lot of time just kind of learning, I'm building some agents. I've built a couple
Oh, nice.
GPTs. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's just, I use it for everything. So that's just kind of been something that's really been a little bit of a project for me.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to seeing those launch.
Yeah. They're all internal to organizations right
Yeah, I
now
figured,
that I've
yeah.
built. Yeah. Well, I have one for a pizzeria, so.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
You can follow.
Interesting.
Yeah. I'll give you
Okay.
the details on that after.
Okay. We're not allowed to share it here. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it. And yeah, we'll chat with you again.
Yeah, no, great. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Heather.
Thanks.
Okay.